Welcome back to the Low Stick Podcast. I'm here with my co-host, Eric Dettman. I'm Jason Retz. We have a double edition of this month's podcast. We're going to do this in two parts for you. We want to talk about our buildups for our track season from the end of cross. And we have a little bit different scenarios and situations on the things that we can do with what our schedules look like, where we're at, what the weather looks like. And we don't do things. This is probably the most different that we do for our training out of the entire year. So we want to talk and walk you through maybe some things that you could pick up or take away or go, man, they really screwed that up and could do a lot better at it. So without any further ado, what we want to start with is we want to start with the Lincoln women who competed at the NXN meet a couple months ago. They completed their season early December. What did it look like for your ladies building up into what is going to be this track season? How much time did they take off? What did it look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. So 2 weeks of nothing for our kids. One of our girls actually prolonged her season by a week because she really wanted to run a half marathon. And we wanted to allow her to do that and kind of reward her for what she's done over the course of the season. So post half marathon, she took her 2 weeks off, but our kids are really good about it. And I think, by the end of the year, they felt a little bit tired too, but they're really good about taking their 2 weeks, especially the girls. So we took 2 weeks off. We have some girls who are going to compete at Nike Indoor Nationals. So what we had told them is if you're going to take your 2 weeks, it's got to be, right after NXN. But what's really important is you've got to be consistent through the rest of December. So we've had teams that have made NXN in the past. And what we've done is, run up through Christmas break and then take your time off during Christmas break. And then you can get started, when we get back. But what we found was, post NXN, a lot of their running was like 3 miles, 2 miles, 4 miles. There's no workouts. There wasn't a lot of volume. So what felt like 2 weeks ended up being almost a month. Which isn't terrible because some kids need that. But for our girls specifically this year, like we told them, take your 2 weeks off after NXN. We're going to dive back into it. You're just going to go for runs. I don't really talk to my kids in December. A big part of that is one, I need a break as a coach, right? Like this is a year-round thing. But also like I want kids who want to do it. And I want kids who are willing to make the sacrifice to do it. And make the choice to do it. So I don't really talk to them. I say, be creative. If there's things you want to do, go do that. If you just want to go for runs, that's cool too. My only ask, and I'll send out like a mileage buildup sheet. But my ask is like, just make sure you follow the mileage that we're talking about and doing hard strides after your runs. But outside of that, get creative. And it's kind of fun. You hop on Strava and you're like, oh, that's kind of a fun workout. Why did they do that one today? But it's cool to see them like learning and choosing, making decisions.
So that leads them to about the week before Christmas. Now, your guys were done a little sooner than that, almost a full month, right?
Yeah.
What did training look like for them? Did we do the same break? How did it lead up for them to the point where you're at now?
Yeah, so it was a little similar with our guys. Some of the kids we said a week, some of the kids we said 2 weeks, depending on who they were, their age, things like that. Some kids we said take a week and run a couple of days in the second week. Some we said, you could start running right away. That was really, kind of specific to each of those kids.
Well, let me back you up. Hold on. Let me back you up there. You
Yeah.
did have a handful of guys that did run NXR, correct?
Correct.
So through the end of their state series till NXR, I'm sure they were still training, correct?
Correct.
How many kids were doing that for you?
15.
15. So,
Yes.
so 16 through the end, did they immediately take off after their last meet? Or did they wait until after NXR was over?
We took all those kids to NXR.
Okay.
So they were all like after NXR, like that group was taking time off. Some of our kids who like didn't go to NXR, they were gone, well before that.
Okay. So your guys' team doesn't line up exactly based on the NXR.
Correct. Yeah.
But there's still roughly 2-ish weeks in there.
Right. And our top guys are all, our top 15 are the ones who are going to NXR. So those kids are aligned. And truthfully, a lot of the kids who are below that are some of our younger kids who need a longer break anyways, because it's their first time ever doing this.
Okay.
But we'll give them the same instruction, like, take 2 weeks. Some of them might take 4 weeks. I'm pretty sure there's been a couple who've taken 8 weeks. There's a few who I'm sure it's going to be 3 months, and we'll see them the first day of cross country, but that's okay, right? That's their decision to make. And um, you know, if it's a kid who feels like they want to be serious and they don't end up having the spring that they want to have, it's a really good learning opportunity for them, especially the younger kids. Like, I just think that, you see this a lot in club sports. We push these kids too much at a younger age. They end up hating it and learning to hate it by the time they're juniors and seniors. So let's let them figure out that they really love this and they want to make the choices to be really good at it. I think
Yeah.
that's really important.
I couldn't agree with you more. I'm seeing fewer and fewer kids transitioning from other sports into our sport, or vice versa, back and forth. Seems
Yeah.
like they complete their sport and then they're not trying something else. So
Right.
I don't want to
I'll
run
say
away
this.
from what we got.
Yeah, I'll say this. I never have a kid leave cross country to go play soccer, but I can count on many, many, many hands. I don't got enough hands and toes and all those things for the kids who have come from soccer to cross country. And I think there's a really serious reason for that. And it's not just they weren't good enough to play soccer,
Yeah.
because we've had varsity girl captains as juniors come out for cross country as seniors.
That's pretty awesome. All right. So we got through the time where they're kind of training themselves, maybe the first couple weeks of that coming back at, just before Christmas time. When do you start to really throw some structure into their training?
Uh, I would say the first, like, Monday that I'm back in January is when we're going to start doing some more specific training where we're going to focus on workouts, or we might do, I'm prescribing something. It's not them just like making it up and deciding what they want to do on that day. So that for me is like that first Monday in January is that first time we meet. And we'll meet 3 times a week, Monday, Thursday, and then Saturday. And it's a variation of a lot of different things that we're doing.
So the question is, on a preparation range, what do you take into account? Do you take into account that your varsity kids have pretty much done what they're supposed to over the last 3 weeks? Or do you
Yeah,
put a little more give and take into what you're starting with?
I mean, there's certainly some give and take. So we ask that all of our kids are on Strava and they join a Redbird Running Club, which is like our mascot essentially. We ask them to join our group. It is a private group, so some kids don't love Strava, which I get. Some kids don't want to post that stuff. But that gives me a really good idea of where we're at. And then every Sunday, I go into Strava and I look at, our group, and then I write, or I have a sheet in Google Sheets where I keep track of each week what everyone's doing. And that'll give me an idea of like, yeah, Danny has been super consistent running 50, 52 miles a week or whatever it might be. Or, Elise, and I'm going to use her name because she's like the most consistent. So if she watches this, she's not going to feel bad. But I'm like, oh, Elise, why did you run 10 miles and then 28 and then 6 and then 9 and then 21? Like, that'll give me a lot of really good information of like what I should be prescribing for these kids.
All right. So when you start prescribing training for them, what are you shooting for early on? Like, are you, what's your season look like? Are you indoor track? Are you shooting to train them for outdoor track? How quick is the buildup for what you're trying to train for when you start back January 1?
Yeah, it's some of it's dependent on kid, obviously. But we don't have an indoor season in Oregon. We have what I would consider 4 opportunities to compete. So last weekend, one of the local high schools hosts like an all-comers 3K that we have a handful of kids that'll run at. So that's kind of like the opener for us. This upcoming week, so tomorrow and Sunday, is the UW high school invite. So that's a really awesome opportunity. We have kids running 3Ks, we have kids running miles, we have kids running 800s, and it's, again, some of the best kids in the country, which is really exciting. So we have that. Moving past that, we have the Wildwood Miles, which is Marie and Robin's event. So Wildwood Running, they have a miles for female athletes, just like a mile after mile after mile, similar to like Magis in Chicago. And then Nike Indoors for some of our like top athletes, and that actually overlaps with our outdoor season. But I know that we have those things in mind. So we're training a little bit with that in mind, similar to probably what you do from an indoor perspective, but we're not really emphasizing that. Like, do we want to run fast at UW over the next 2 days? We sure do. Are we going to be really sad and disappointed if we don't? We're not, right? We see what we've done up to this point. We're excited about that. But to your question, which I haven't really answered yet, so I apologize. Like, we're we're going to run fast initially, right? When I say that, I'm not saying we're, running 800s at VO2 max pace or something like that, but we want our kids to be turning over right away. So I talked about earlier, like I tell them, the kids in December, you can do what you want, but you got to follow the mileage plan and you have to do strides. And we'll continue that as we get into it. So like the first day, and I learned this from Kelly Christensen at Jay Johnson's clinic, 4x200 at goal end of season mile pace. Our kids did that. And I think that's golden. We have kids who are running, girls who are running, and we might dive into this in a bit, 3x400 as kind of a little tune up for a race this weekend. And they're running 67, 66, 64, whatever it might be.
That's
That
pretty
doesn't
good.
happen. Yeah. And that doesn't happen without us like running quick
Yeah.
early in the season. So we are doing, some longer stuff. We are doing some like, 800 specific workouts, I would say, or what 800 runners would typically be doing this time of year. But we're really trying to focus on like what each individual kid needs.
So when you are looking at what your week looks like, how specific are you? Is your long run still present? What day are you running these workouts? Walk me through what a Monday through Sunday looks like for you.
Yeah. So Monday, Thursday, Saturday are the days that we're going to meet. Monday is what I would consider always our hardest workout. And the reason for that is I think then we give ourselves, 2 days in between, where we're coming back on Thursday and then Saturday's, our long run. So Mondays, so for example, last week, when we were working out, Monday would have been, we have this new workout that we've been doing that I like really love. So it's 1,000 at tempo. It's 200 jog, 200 at mile pace, 1,000 at tempo. Or I'm sorry, let me repeat that. 1,000 at tempo, 200 jog, 200 at mile pace, 200 jog. And then you repeat that over and over and over again. So it ends up being like a mile of total volume for each interval. We don't have a lot of great places to do long fartleks at Lincoln. We're an inner city school. We've got, city roads all around us. We can get up into the trails, but that's not a great place to do. Like a fartlek like this. So we've been doing it on the track. And what's great is, we've got kids who are running like 550 pace for 7 miles, doing a glorified fartlek on the track, and they love it and they're really enjoying it. So that's kind of like what that looked like. Was we did a lot of that on Monday. Come back a couple days later, and we're running, we're running some like faster stuff where we might be running, some 600s at tempo and then coming back and running a couple 300s at mile effort.
So are
So
most are most doing a variation of this? Are your varsity kids all the way through your last kid doing some type of variation of this workout, or you got different groups kind of going out the door there?
different groups doing different things. I would say everybody's doing something similar. Their volume is just significantly different.
Okay.
So I want my new kids, and there's some kids that we've labeled as like more of our half mile types. So they're going to do something that's shorter than that. They're going to do something that's a little bit less volume. But if I've got a kid who I think is more of like a 3K athlete, but they're still new and they've been running, right? It's not like this is their first day.
Yeah.
We're going to do the same workout, but significantly less volume. So they might just do 2 of those. But 2 miles, 2 mile fartlek's a really great workout for a pretty new sophomore.
Yeah, especially in January. Great place to start.
Exactly. And they really like it. One of my top girls, the first time we did this in early January, she was doing it and she was flying. And so we started tempo and they progressed, they run a little quicker, but nobody's out of control. But what was funny is she comes through on like rep 4 and she was like, I feel like you're just making us do a glorified fartlek. And I was like, ding, ding, ding. That's exactly what we're doing. But it's cool because the kids in a weird way gain confidence from, knowing like, oh, I average this for my case. So that component is kind of nice too, but it's a fartlek, and we give the kids a little bit of leeway. You want to run your off 250 seconds, you can do that. You want to run your off 280 seconds, you can do that. Like, I don't really care.
Yeah.
But that's been a big, kind of a build up. We do Washington Park Hills, probably every other week, which is another big workout that we really like. That's been a staple. I talked about this on this podcast, but it's like a 600.
Yeah.
Go
So
ahead.
walk me through what Washington looks like, just so everybody knows.
Yeah, so it's a 650-meter hill, with various grades of incline. There's parts where it's 2%, there's parts where it's 12%. But I love it because it's 650 meters up, but then there's kind of a chute that runs down through the middle. That's 330-ish meters. So we can keep the rest a little limited. So we'll use that early as like a hilly fartlek, and late in the season is like a VO2 type thing. But it's been great because our kids know it. Like they have an idea, like if I'm averaging 235 on this, I'm in X shape or whatever that might be. But that's a big staple to what we do. We're not like super fancy. We don't have all these different workouts. We have a couple things that we know that we work really well. We sprinkle in some other stuff. But we really try to just stay consistent with what we know.
So take me away from your running in your preseason or your buildup.
Yeah.
What non-running activities or things are they doing to prepare?
You say what, non-running?
Yes. Are they in the weight
Yeah,
room? What are
sure.
they doing?
Yeah, weight room's hard to get into because wrestling likes to have it from 4 to 8 p.m. So it's a little challenging, which they should have access to it because they're a winter sport and we're not. So we try to make do. So we have grab bag, which is something that I started, I think in 2019 with having as many kids on the team as we do. It's just hard to be able to get all of these kids to be starting a workout at the same time. So we've got like 5 or 6 grab bags. They've got like 25 drills. I'll let the kids pick. I'll tell them I want you to do 10 different things in that bag. They'll pick it out. They get to choose the reps, but it's a lot of really good body weight drill. Some of it is band work. So we're getting a little bit of that type of work in. But we're not quite in the weight room. We'll start that come February when our official season starts. But for now, we're just kind of making do with what we've got.
I love the fact that you're giving ownership to them when they're
Yeah,
selecting these things, especially early on. Some of those young kids, simple coordination is going to help them run faster, let alone run a
right.
mile.
Well, that's the big thing that we try to focus on is like building up, that ability to do athletic movements. I think I've talked about this on the podcast, but there was a guy who works with one of the professional groups here in Oregon. And he asked me a question like, why is this person your best runner? And I was thinking to myself, like, you're not just asking like, is this person the most talented? And what I realized is like, you're asking me like, why? And the reason is because they were athletic. They were the most athletic kid on the team. So we really try to build that into our program. So even before our workouts, we're doing wickets, we're doing ladders, we're doing sprint drills. We're distance runners, and some of them look goofy, and some of them, 2 years later, are still trying to figure out how to make or do some of these motions. But it's so valuable in helping them to run fast. It's so valuable.
Absolutely, it is. And, the athletic movements. I know this is your show, but the athletic movements, I mean, I'm a strength teacher, and those are just so valuable for every sport. And I think we lose sight of those sometimes when we get into our general training.
I agree. And I think when you bring kids in from other sports, like part of what they enjoyed about those other sports were the athletic movements. It wasn't necessarily just
Yep.
going and running for 25 minutes or 45 minutes or whatever that number might be. But so it's trying to give back to that and honor that, like they have other things they like, and let's incorporate that into our program so that they enjoy this program as much as they enjoy that one.
Absolutely. And for some of those kids, that stuff's just fun. They just enjoy it.
Right.
All right, so you've got a general buildup going now. How far? Obviously, right now we're at the beginning of February, right?
Right.
How long does this period of your training last? What are you thinking about? How much time in between races? You mentioned that there's 4 races in the Nike indoor.
Yeah.
How much time in between? Are you wanting them to race all 4? What's it look like for you?
Yeah, that's a good question. So 2 of the races are back to back. Then we get a week off, and then we get 2 weeks off. In terms of Sherwood, we had 8 kids total race. And that's not just like our top kids. That's, we kind of open that up to anybody who wants to do it. So 8 kids made the decision to race, and we really let them choose. I think one kid, I was like, hey, I'd really like you to do this because I want to get an idea of where he was at. And he was going to Disneyland. So he couldn't, which, that's a great reason not to.
Yeah, right.
But then UW, like I'll send out, the registration for that opens up January 1st. I'll send out a text saying like, this opens, it's going to close shortly. If you want to do it, sign up. And I think we've got like 28 kids or something like that. So they make that choice. And here's what I love, right? Like I've got, Ellery Lincoln and Sophia Malinowski and Kira Savager, who are 3 girls who ran at NXN who are signed up. And I've got girls who are 14, 35 or 3K girls who are signed up. Like I love that, right? Like that these kids want to be a part of it. I've got 4 or 5 of these girls in one heat. I am so pumped to watch them race together in the slowest heat of the 3K because they're going to do cool stuff, and they've taken winter conditioning really seriously. And when I send out a text to these kids and I say, you know, text me back if you want the mileage buildup. Like I don't tell kids this is what you're going to do. They have to come to me and say like, I want, what column do you think I should run in? And I send it to them, and then I look at the Strava and I'm like, oh my God, they're following it perfectly. That gets me fired up.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I absolutely love that. But I will say, like, we're to the point where kids are coachable, just make our day, right? Like
Yes.
that's the best thing ever. All
Yeah.
right. So you mentioned where you're at, kind of what your racing looks like. I'm gonna play devil's advocate here. Why are you running fast stuff in January when you are going to have your state meet in May?
Yeah. I think that's a good question. Um, I think if you are being, conscious of what you're doing, you can run fast in January and run even faster in May. I'm a believer in some of it is people I've talked to, things I've learned, clinics I've been to. Like, just because you're running fast in January doesn't mean you can't run fast in May. And if you want to run really fast in May, but you only start doing that in late April, you're not ever going to run as fast as you want it to. I look at a program. I said this early, Kelly Christensen and Iowa, like they're running quick, not every day. They're judicious about when they're doing that, but they're running quick. I look at like what, some of the Oregon guys are doing under Ben Thomas, like they're running quick in January. And guess what? Cole Hawker and Cooper Tier ran pretty quick in, May and June at the NCAA championships as well. So I think that, if you're trying to rip a bunch of stuff at VO2 max in January, like you're going to potentially run into some issues. If you're going to do a mile specific workout every week, you might run into some issues. But I think that you can be, judicious about it and still get your kids to run fast. And I'll be honest, some of what I've learned too is like from my sprint coach, they're sprinting. Yesterday they did 3x150 with 12 minutes rest, and those kids were flying. And you know what? They're going to run really fast in May.
Yeah.
So if the sprinters have the ability to do that, why can't the distance runners do something similar? Again, they're not sprinting every week, they're not sprinting every day, but they're tinkering and adding that in little by little. And I think that they're finding a lot of success with that. So we're doing it as well. And we've done it the last couple of years and we've found success with it.
Okay, so you get through outdoor and then you start officially. I'm sorry, you get through indoor and you officially start outdoor. Your indoor is
Yeah.
unofficial. Without giving me what outdoor looks like, what are some of the emphasis points that you want to make sure that you're taking care of at this point of the season,
Yep.
that you're ready for later? So I know that's tough to answer without telling me what you're doing later, but what are you making sure you take care of now?
Yeah. I mean, we're trying to tap into a bunch of systems, but we're really trying to focus on being super strong and super fast, which I know sounds maybe counterintuitive because it's like the opposite ends of the spectrum, but I believe that you can tap into both of those and find success. So that 5x1,000, 200 workout where we're 1,000 at tempo, 200 easy, 200 mile, 200 easy, like we're kind of sort of tapping into both of those. But like that's a workout that our kids are getting super duper strong from. And then they're going to come back and, they're going to run 8x400 as a tune-up, getting ready for a meet at UW. Like they're going to tap into that mile pace a little bit, but we're not going to touch that again for a while. We'll use some of those races as an opportunity to run pretty quick. But we're really, we're trying to focus on those two things. Again, I know it sounds counterintuitive, but we found success with it. And our kids are super strong and they're running super fast.
So what's your outdoor start date?
Outdoor start is February 26th.
So we say on February 25th, if
Yeah.
athlete X is this, we've had a successful buildup. What is that?
Injury free, consistently running 6 days a week, 2 workouts in a long run, and has the ability to take what we've done and continue that into the next phase. So for me, what that looks like is, that 1,200 workout. Well, what I want that to turn into is 1,000 at tempo, 200 at mile, no 200 jog in between. So if we can execute and prepare them in January and February so that come, mid-March, they're able to do something like that, that I would consider as a successful buildup. If I think if a kid can run 6x400 with 2 minutes rest at their goal mile pace, and that workout feels relatively easy, not easy like, oh my gosh, I didn't do anything, but easy in the sense like I could have done 2, 3, 4 more reps, I consider that a successful buildup. But the big thing obviously is consistency and in volume, them running what we want them to run over an extended period of time.
So when you get to that point, you have all those things accomplished, racing wise, and because I know some people will argue one way or the other. Okay.
Yep.
You got somebody with 4 races, you got somebody with 0 races. As you transition into their outdoor season and look at where they're potentially going to finish their season, are you concerned about racing early, or are you like, we're in it, let's go?
Yeah, I'm not really concerned about racing early, to be honest. Coming from Illinois, like we had a full indoor season, and it's not that we emphasized it, but we certainly had a full one. And every year, we had certain races that we were like, we're getting after it, right? Like my senior year, we were trying to run the national record in the 4x8 indoors. So we put emphasis on that, and we talked about that, and we trained for that. That did not prevent me from running 9 flat, a couple months later in the 3200 outdoors. So I think that you can do things early and still find a lot of success late. So I'm not concerned if kids are racing, especially in track and field. I think it's a little different than running, 5K after 5K after 5K. But if you're just running an 800 all out, like that's not going to prevent you from running another 800 next week really hard.
Yeah. I don't want to agree or disagree with you but I understand exactly what you're saying and where you're at. All right, so we've run, we're stronger, we're consistent, we're healthy, we're ready to go outdoor season. As a coach, as we step back and just look at our side of it just quickly, your demands, you give them, correct me if I'm wrong, but you give them pretty much December to themselves.
Yep.
You start in January through the middle of February, contacting them frequently, but not seeing them but 3 days a week, right?
Right.
Do you find that your balance is pretty good when you start in officially with them?
Balance in terms of like,
Personal balance?
yeah, yeah. I mean, I'll be honest, like I'm itching to see them more consistently.
Yep.
And I'll find myself like, I don't have to do a training run starting from Lincoln. I can do it from my house, but I started from Lincoln because it's like, yeah, it'd be nice to like check in with the kids in person. We meet officially 3 times, but I'll still see them, more often than that. Because I get the itch, I miss them, and I want to hang out with them, and they do cool stuff, and it's fun to watch that. And I honestly, I feel inspired when I'm at the school and I see 11 kids walk out of the school together to go for a training run. Like I feel inspired by that. So
Yeah. No, that is awesome. Great stuff. All right. So I think we've got it all. You got anything else you want to throw into that we've not covered?
no, the one thing that I think is just important is kind of what I talked about earlier of like, I firmly believe, and I was talking to another coach about this, who's kind of an up and coming coach in the area. I think that at some point there was this idea of like, we don't run fast until, or we haven't even run fast yet or something like that. Like, why not? I think you can. And I would challenge, people who are listening to this to, I'm not saying again, go rip a bunch of 400s at mile pace in January and start doing that every week, but like tap into that system, allow the kids to turn over, allow the kids to run fast. They enjoy it. And I, in my heart believe that like they're going to run faster in May because of it.
Absolutely. And your weather most of the time cooperates with you, lets you do that. You're at a
Yeah.
place that allows you to do that. Contact rules are a little different in some states, and you guys have the luxury to do that, and that's awesome. And you run a lot of that off-season stuff through your club, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's awesome that you have the ability to do that. It's not practice during school like Texas for all you
Yeah.
Texas people out there, but it's still awesome to have. All right, so that's part one. We're coming back at you with part two, my version of it. Hopefully, we give you some differences in some of the things we do based on where we're at. But if you got questions, let us know, and we will be happy to answer those. We've got some things we want to share. So maybe what we can do is we can snip some screenshots of some of the documents or things that Coach Dettman's talking about, and we can share those with you through X or Twitter or whatever the heck that's called too. So let us know you got any questions. Hopefully you're going to listen to number two here real quick.